Hello, fellow bookworms. I'm Hallie.
And I'm Brittany.
We hope you guys had an awesome holiday season. We know that we both did. Well, thank you for diving back into the abyss with us today. We are super excited to talk to you. It feels like it's been a little bit for us. We kind of took a leave of absence. We've both had a lot going on lately with family and personal lives, Christmas, we had Thanksgiving and everything, it all seemed to hit at once. So it's been a little crazy for us, and we're excited to finally get back into things. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and give us that 5-star rating. Give us a little comment. We love your support. We love to hear what you have to say. We do read every single one. So go ahead and shoot us one of those messages. And if you're listening on YouTube, make sure you hit like, subscribe, save it, do all that fun stuff. So every time we get a new episode up, you're the first one to be notified. If you're listening on Spotify, just have fun. You're just kind of here for the ride, and that's cool. During our episodes, if you want any show notes or you want to see some pictures of the case, you can always go to our website, theabysspod.com. We put everything up on there for you to see. Even on cases like this where we're talking about the book club, we talk about cases that relate to the book in a true crime sort of fashion. So we have pictures of those up there as well, and links, resources, all of those kind of things. So make sure you go on there and check it out. The book we're going to be talking about today that we all read through the Christmas season is The 19th Christmas by James Patterson and Maxine Paetro. To start off the episode, we'll go ahead into the summary so that way you can get kind of an idea or a reminder if you read it a while ago about what the book was about. Quote, as the holidays approach, Detective Lindsay Boxer and her friends in the Women's Murder Club have much to celebrate. Crime is down. The medical examiner's office is quiet. Even the courts are showing some Christmas spirit. And the news cycle is so slow that journalist Cindy Thomas is on assignment to tell a story about the true meaning of the season for San Francisco. Then a fearsome criminal known only as Loman seizes control of the headlines. Solving crimes never happens on schedule, but as the criminal mastermind unleashes credible threats by the hour, the month of December is upended for the Women's Murder Club. Avoiding tragedy is the only holiday miracle they seek. End quote. So we're just going to come out front and be honest with you guys. We all take a little backtrack sometimes, and your girl Hallie did not read the book. I apologize. I know you all put so much effort in, but I did not. Brittany did, though. So she's going to be giving her insight and talking about all the stuff, and we're still going to have some fun with it. I'm just here for the ride, honestly. To kick off, we're going to talk about the authors. First, James Patterson. We all know who he is. Some of us love him. Some of us hate him. Some of us don't really even care to have an opinion. So we're just going to dive into a little bit about him. He's super well known. He's written action novels, thrillers, romance, nonfictions. He's even written some children's book under some sort of whatever that word is called. Pseudonym.
Pseudonym.
Is it pseudonym? I don't know.
That doesn't sound right.
Oh well,
he
goes under a different name. I think it's like Jimmy Patterson or something like that, but he's written kids books and stuff like that. He has written 176 books and he's sold 300 million copies. He was the first person to sell 1 million ebooks. He's been on Forbes' highest paid author list multiple times, and he's worked in a bunch of different areas in his life in relation to book publications. He published his first novel in 1976, and he worked in advertising until 1996. He's had 114 New York Times bestsellers. Like, could I just have one?
Honestly.
Just one. He's sold more copies than Stephen King, John Grisham, and Dan Brown combined. That's insane because, those are huge names in the world of libraries. So it's just incredible to think of how many books he's had that really reached the top charts. Also, Stephen King is not a fan of him. If you want to look up more on that, you can, but they always make kind of like petty high school girl comments towards each other. But it's pretty interesting if you want to check that out. He's won many awards, and in his career, he even got the chance to work with Bill Clinton to write The President is Missing, and they got to talk in detail and really go in depth about how the story should be laid out. Generally, though, James Patterson will just kind of write the outline for his books, and others will kind of fill in the missing gaps.
Allegedly.
Not real, I guess. No one can really say that.
I mean, he's pretty much admitted to basically writing the outlines and then kind of having the final say on the book, but having other people, especially books like this that he co-authored, I think the other author probably filled in most of it and he comes back in and approves it or whatever.
Also, his books receive some pretty heavy backlash from other critics. Some people really enjoy James Patterson, some people don't. On the upside, James Patterson donated a lot of money to school libraries so that way kids would get more excited about reading. He started the website readkiddoread.com, which helps parents and teachers find suitable books for kids that they'll really enjoy and that's appropriate for their age group. He's also set up some scholarship and he has his own entertainment company. He currently lives in Palm Beach with his wife and their son. As for the co-author, Maxine Paetro, she originally wrote content about how to get a job in advertising, and the book was described as the advertising industry Bible in a sort of way. She started writing novels in 1986, and she's been friends with Patterson ever since the 70s. So he published his first book in 76, and they were friends even before that.
I think they worked in advertising together.
Ooh, holla for the advertising department coming out with hits. They collaborated on the Women's Murder Club series since the fourth book. That's another thing. If you didn't know that the 19th Christmas was like the 19th book in a series, there's a fun fact for you. You can read the others if you really enjoyed it.
And they all have similarly number-themed titles.
And characters, and stories, and plots.
Yeah.
She also has a garden called Broccoli Hall, which has been featured in magazines. Why? Is it a cool broccoli garden?
It doesn't have anything to do with broccoli. It's just the name. I don't know why it's called that, but it's like a fancy garden, like like the English fancy gardens that are in like Better Homes and Gardens magazine, that kind of thing. Apparently she's a big deal in that circle.
Wow, put me in Southern boutiques.
Literally.
She's also a koi enthusiast and has worked on projects to cultivate unique varieties of koi. So she's not only into writing, but she's also into nature and animals and science as well.
So now we will get into my thoughts on the book. And full disclosure, it wasn't my favorite book. So
I read the first 3 chapters, I'll be honest. And it was just so many people. That's my only bone to pick. There were just so many people involved. And it was like, who's talking? When did this happen? What's going on?
Yeah, and I feel like this is the 19th book in a series, so obviously if you read the first 18, you probably have a better grasp on the characters and things like that, but you didn't really need to read those to kind of know what was going on with this. But I read a lot of reviews on this book, and a lot of people that had read the entire series said that they did not like this one and that it was the worst one.
Oh no.
So
we apologize.
So if you did like it and you like the series, that's great. If you didn't like this book, but you generally like James Patterson, maybe try the other ones. Who knows? Maybe they're a hit. But I feel like overall this book kind of was more like watching an episode of NCIS or one of those shows that's been on for forever that just has endless amounts of episodes, but they're all kind of more simplistic plots and it's kind of wrapped up in 45 minutes. That's kind of the feel I got for this, but it was drawn out a lot, even though it was a pretty short book. I felt like it was really disjointed at parts, but again, that might be because the 18 books before it may have kind of pulled those things together more or given you context for things that just felt kind of out of place to me.
I know we keep throwing books at you guys that are the middle of a series.
Yeah, we should probably stop doing that.
I think this is the third one we did, right?
Yeah.
Because there was the
Butterfly Garden. But that was the first one, so that was better.
Yeah. And then there was the one that we did that your mom recommended.
Oh, yeah, Find Her. That was
Find
smack
Her.
in the middle.
Yeah,
but I will say with that one, I have read the first 3 books in that series now, and they don't even have the only common thread through that entire series is Dee Dee Warren, and she's not even in the first 2 books almost at all. So I feel like that was okay.
And now this one.
Yeah, this one I feel like it's more of a character driven book than a plot driven book, and this whole series may be like that because it's a 21 book series, so obviously it's more episodes of a show kind of with the characters throughout. So
People falling in love or stuff like that.
Yeah, and a lot of people had gripes with the characters' husbands and stuff in the reviews I read. Apparently they were kind of different in the previous
Divorce
books.
him.
Divorce. But I don't know, someone that has read all of the books, maybe if you're listening, leave a comment or send us a message and let us know what you thought. It was pretty short. It was a short book. It was only like 7 hours to listen to, and it was pretty fast moving, which was nice. So it captured attention and didn't really have spells that were just boring and stuff. It was pretty quick to move along, which was nice but yeah, it definitely felt like kind of the Christmas special that you see in NCIS or CSI or those shows that have just been on for a million years.
Hallmark.
Yeah, definitely some vibes of that. The twist of the book was pretty much laid out at the beginning, so it wasn't really that interesting to find out. It wasn't like a big revelation or anything. And even though it kind of tried to do the misdirection thing where it's like, oh, is it this? Is it that? Even that was kind of immediately explained in a lot of places. So like you couldn't really carry any of those threads all the way to the end. There wasn't a lot of mystery in it. It was mostly mystery for the characters, which there are really good books where the reader knows a lot more than the characters. But I feel like in this one, we knew everything interesting. So then you're just waiting for characters that you're not super invested in to figure out something. And it's like, you know?
Yeah,
Does that make
I see
sense?
what you're saying.
The characters definitely had kind of the dimensionality of Hallmark movie characters, where it was such stereotypes. It was like the cop that's too focused on their job, and like the wife that's mad that their husband keeps leaving because he's a cop, and you know, that kind of thing.
I'm glad I didn't read it then, because I absolutely hate Hallmark movies.
It was just such common tropes that it's like, for characters that you've had 18 books to develop, you'd think you could give them a little bit more depth. I saw one critique of Patterson that said he was really good at the airport novel. So like the book that you just kind of pick up because you need something to do while you're waiting for a layover or something like that. And I definitely agree with that. It's not very complicated, not really in depth, isn't really going to make you feel one way or another. Like you're not going to be sobbing in the airport or like laughing or anything. It's just...
Or staying up for 4 hours binging it. You just kind of like read it and then put it down and you're done.
Exactly. And it's like, oh, if it gets lost, then it's like, okay, you know, It's not super memorable. It's not gripping, but it's not so bad that you're like, oh, I'm gonna chuck it immediately.
I could agree with that. Even though I haven't read like the whole book, I did read his other book, Zoo, and I can agree that that's kind of like his style.
So the main plot came to a resolution, and like I said, it was well paced, but it was pretty anticlimactic to me and sort of had me rooting for the bad guys in the end, which you never want in like a crime book. The subplot with the wrongful conviction thing never led to anything unless I missed something major, which maybe I kind of like sped through the last couple hours of it, but it seems like it just kind of dropped off. Like they talked about it for like 3 chapters in the beginning and then they just never addressed it again. And maybe it picks up in like book 19 or 20 or no, we're in 19, book 20 or something, but it was just like nothing. So it's like, why even include it? Even if it was the like story of the next book, why not just put it there, you know?
Yeah, or at the end put like a little teaser into like
it was
what's gonna happen.
They literally never talked about it again.
Like, oh, and the knife was on the ground and someone picked it up, you know, and that's the end. I don't know.
And like I love wrongful conviction cases. Like those are so interesting to me. So I was like pretty intrigued about it, and then it just cut off and I was like, oh, okay. And like I was like, that
cliffhanger.
Yeah, like that should have been the main plot of the book. Overall, like I said, it wasn't my favorite. It's not one that I disliked to where I was like, I can't read any more of this, but it wasn't one that was groundbreaking or anything super memorable, and definitely not one that left me like, oh, I gotta finish the series or anything like that. When we read Find Her, I really liked that book, so it made me want to go back and like start the series from the beginning and listen to the whole thing, but this one definitely did not do it for me. So again, if you have read the series and you love it, let us know. I think I'd give this one like a 2.5 out of 5.
Agreed.
Your 3 chapters were
3 chapters.
2 out of 5.
Personally, in my mind, though, if I am like reading a book and I'm not thinking about wanting to read it after like 4 or 5 chapters in, like usually, and short chapters, obviously, like obviously if it's 4 or 5 chapters and the book's 10 chapters, then it doesn't really matter. But like if in the first, you know, little set of the book, if it doesn't have me hooked, I usually don't want to keep reading.
Yeah, it's definitely the author's responsibility to hook you like pretty quick, because they don't have that much time, especially, you know, if you're standing in Barnes and Noble or something and you just open a book and read the first couple pages, like even that needs to be interesting enough that you're like, oh, okay. But yeah, I wouldn't I wouldn't say this book really grabbed me. And I think, you know, I mean, you know me, I'm definitely not for keep like reading a whole book if you don't like the book. But for this one, since we had already announced it, I kind of had to go through with it. But
I know Brittany's like, oh, if we didn't announce it, let's chuck it.
But wasn't the worst book I've ever read. Wasn't the best book I've ever read. And we'll leave it at that.
I like it.
So now we are going to jump into some of the true crime connections that I found for this book. And Hallie's just kind of going to react and we'll tell her some stories.
Once again, I didn't really contribute to this episode. I am just here for the ride like you guys. I will be the voice of the people.
One of the first, and some of these are kind of stretches, so bear with me, guys, but this one's pretty specific, that one of the stories that Julian gave was that the San Francisco Mint was going to be robbed.
The San Francisco Mint was robbed.
And it was indeed.
That's so funny.
So he was
tapping the nail on the head. Oh, not in real life?
In real life, not in the book.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah. So he was correct. He was
just
it
about before the book came out?
It was very much before the book came out.
Ooh.
About 100 years or so.
What?
Yeah. It happened in July of 1901.
Oh. I was thinking like after the book came out, but I said before. So I was like, maybe someone was like being, all psychedelic, picking out that stuff. But no.
Psychedelic. No, it happened in a
cake. That's
Anyway. Yes, it was robbed in July of 1901. About $30,000 worth of coins went missing from the vault, and suspicions kind of immediately fell on the chief clerk, Walter Dimmick. He had been allegedly told that he was about to be fired and would need to find a new job, and so according to authorities, Dimmick was kind of mad that he was about to be fired, so he decided to rob the joint.
As one would.
The regular cashier at the Mint was out sick with bronchitis, so Dimmick was taking over that day. And also the combination to the vault had been changed, and the new combination was in a sealed envelope, which Dimmick may or may not have had in his possession at some point. So maybe he had the combination. It was 1901, so a lot of the facts are a little hazy. After the coins disappeared, the U.S. Secret Service started investigating. Employees were told not to talk about what happened, but Dimmick immediately started trying to defend himself to everybody. He was kind of blabbing a little bit.
Calm yourself.
And he was eventually charged on August 13th of 1901 and had a trial. He couldn't make the bail that they had set, so he stayed in jail until the trial. During the trial, the evidence was pretty much all circumstantial. They didn't have any real physical evidence at this point, which it was 1901, so there was a lot of tech that couldn't be used at that point. But they didn't find any direct link to him. He was just kind of the most obvious person. So the trial ended in a hung jury. He was finally convicted in April of 1903. He and his wife both maintained his innocence forever. He was eventually released in 1909, and he remained in the area until his death in 1930, but they never found the coins. The interesting thing is, I don't know if you remember, but in 2014, there was like a big fuss about this couple that was just like going for a walk, and they stumbled upon these little canister things or bags or some kind of container, and it had a bunch of coins in it. They were just walking along and found all these coins. It was thought that maybe these were the missing coins. They were about the same age that they would be. They had similar markings and things like that. But it was eventually determined that these were probably not the same coins, but I don't know that they actually ever definitively decided one way or another.
They should have done like DNA testing or something. Could they have done that?
I don't know. Maybe.
They were like, a little bit less than $1 million now. It's fine.
But actually the coins would have been worth a lot more just because of their history, not necessarily just the like worth of the actual, material coin, but like the history and
because they were stolen.
Yeah. So they didn't really investigate that too much, and I remember the news stories back at the time that the couple found the coins. A lot of them.
It's like, you remember 1901?
Back in 1901. Back in my day.
It's like, gosh, something new every day with you.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to tell you I'm actually 150 years old.
I'm a time traveler. Okay.
I remember a lot of people saying either they had to give the coins back or they were going to be like taxed on this fine, because there's like a 40%, 50%, some kind of tax on like found treasure. There's like actually a law for that, which is ridiculous. But anyway,
I just wouldn't tell anybody. Sorry, FBI.
Black market.
It's like when you find a cat, like, do you have to tell anybody or can you just keep it? You know,
You
like,
just own a cat now.
yeah, it is what it is. It's like if I go outside and I pick up a flower, do I have to pay taxes on that flower? No. Sorry, get off politics.
So there have been a lot of other mint thefts throughout history too. Apparently it's a pretty hot spot for robbing. The Philadelphia Mint was robbed in 1893. One of the clerks was found to have stolen $134,000 in gold bars over 10 years, which, okay.
Over 10 years, no one noticed that a gold bar was going missing occasionally.
Just shove it in your pocket. Nobody noticed.
Every month she got a limp. Just for a day.
And in 2011, so much more recent, an employee admitted to having stolen $2.4 million of coins. So they need to vet their employees a little bit better.
How does someone just walk out with coins like that?
I don't know.
My gosh, those are heavy.
The Denver Mint was robbed in 1922, this time not an employee, so plot twist. 5 men rushed a federal delivery truck outside the mint and took about $200,000. It took 12 years to find this team, and most of them were dead or in prison on other charges by that time. So
why would you do that? You get so much money and then you get thrown in jail when you got away with it? What in the world? For like what? A bar brawl? Like, gracious.
So that is it on mint robberies, but there are many more if you're interested in that kind of thing.
I'm interested.
Go look it up. So the next kind of connection is heists near Christmas. In the book, they said there was going to be some kind of heist on Christmas, and yeah.
It is what it is.
That's what happened.
Well, I'm ready. I love a good heist story. Hit me with it, Brittany.
So on December 17th of 1990, a painting by, there's a lot of names in this that are of artists, so if you're like an art nerd, I'm sorry for butchering every single name I'm about to say. But William de Kooning had a painting worth $750,000, and it was stolen from an art dealer's office in New York City. And then 2 days later, at the Robert Miller Gallery in Manhattan, there was another robbery, and this thief got up onto the 7th floor showroom and stole a Les Krasner painting called The Eye is the First Circle. They just cut it right out of the frame, which kind of hurts me for like art. I just feel like that's awful. Just be like... They also stole another painting by David Sal, and they just booked it and left the door swinging open. They just ran. Together, these paintings were valued at $1.4 million combined, so quite a heist, and they just walked out like no one stopped them, no one questioned it. So
Art heists are crazy.
oh my, there's so many wild ones.
I wouldn't even think about stealing art.
And it's like such a hard thing to fence too, because like everyone knows that it's stolen, so you can only sell it to people that are shady.
Mm-hmm. And then once it gets sold, it would be like impossible to track. And it's not like, you know, a dollar bill where they just replicate it. It's like, you know,
Yeah,
a masterpiece.
literally. And I'm pretty sure by this time Les Krasner had died. I believe she died in the mid 80s. She was also, side note, married to Jackson Pollock, who was the only person I knew in this story.
I don't know who that is.
He's the guy that like the paint where he's like just like splattery paint.
He's not the only one.
We saw his paintings, I think, in the museum in Richmond, where it's just like splattery.
I was probably like, I could do that.
Yeah, that's definitely one of those that's like, it's abstract. And you're like,
Is it? Oh, look, I see a horse in that splatter.
This symbolizes world peace. Anyway, now that we've upset all of the art people.
We are also art people. I think it's important to say that we both enjoy the arts and crafts, and like we go hard into it. I think Brittany has like 20 hobbies of just art related things, like in a little cubicle type of thing in her room, and I have some myself. So if we offended anybody, know that it is also coming from people who admire art. Hence why we went to an art museum.
So then a couple days later, on the 21st of December, a painting by Khayyam Soutine, we'll go with that. So a painting by that person was in transport. It had been framed at a little shop and was in a truck to be taken back to the gallery or showroom or whatever. And the driver stepped out of the vehicle and went into a business to run an errand or talk to somebody, and someone just jumped in the truck and drove off.
It is now labeled the biggest regret of his life.
Yeah, maybe don't leave the keys in the car next time.
Maybe he was part of it.
Ooh. They did think that it was possibly an inside job, because how else would someone know exactly where it was at that minute, you know?
I mean, how genius is it of him to be like, oh yeah, you walk down the street, I'm gonna jump out, go in here, you just jump in the car and drive away. And I'll be like, oh no, and then I won't get fired, I'll make bank, and we still get bank.
True. Anybody want to have an art heist? Hallie's in.
What is it you always say? I will take a crisp $5 bill.
So the truck was found a few days later in Harlem, but no painting, and I don't think it has ever been recovered to this day. But the Krasner and Sal paintings were recovered. I really don't know how, but I would love to know how. So if you know, let me know. And they were restored, and Krasner's painting went on to sell for $11.6 million, which was, I can't remember the exact accolade, but it was one of the highest for a female painter, so that's pretty cool.
That is awesome. Probably because it was stolen.
Yeah, I think that definitely has something to do with it. I even think in the auction they like mentioned it, like sordid past.
You know, I'm telling you though, I guarantee that some like art connoisseurs will like pretend that they're stolen or stage stuff like that, put them away in like a little storage closet for 10 years, bring it back out, and next thing you know, it's like $1 billion painting.
Oh, for sure. Definitely.
They sneaky. Y'all worried about the politicians, and you should be worried about the art connoisseurs.
It's presumed that the thefts were connected, but the perpetrators have never been found, and 2 of the 4 paintings have never been recovered. So that's a 20-year mystery at this point.
We'll put a picture of those up on the website, so if you happen to just like walk into a friend's house and it's up on the wall, you can be like, oh shoot, you get that from the black market? Or not.
Or not. So in the book, you know that that Julian and all those people kept kind of giving false leads about what the big heist was going to be on Christmas. And one of them was from the airport. And in February of 2013, at the Brussels airport, 8 masked thieves with guns entered the tarmac of the airport. They actually cut a hole in the security fence and just drove their cars right through. And they had 2 vehicles, and they had police markings on the vehicles, and they were dressed up in kind of police garb and things like that. So they looked very official. There was a plane on the tarmac that had been loaded with $67 million worth of diamonds. They were rough cut. And if you listen to our Antwerp diamond heist episode, then you know kind of why the diamonds were going from Brussels to Zurich. They were raw cut, and they were about to be processed and shipped out and everything, bought and whatever.
Hint, hint, if you haven't listened to that episode, you really should. It's like probably one of my favorite kind of stories, because it's lighthearted. Nobody dies, you know, it's just people being stingy. That's pretty much it. But it's always enjoyable. It's like, listen to those, you feel like you're listening to a real life Oceans movie.
Oh yeah, definitely. And this was kind of along those lines too. Some of them boarded the plane and held the passengers and the captain and everybody at gunpoint, and were just, you know, like, stay calm. And the others of the group.
Oh, right. There is police officers. So it's not like they're coming in, they're like, I'm going to shoot you. They're like, everybody stay calm. Yeah. We're looking for somebody.
So like the captain knew something was up, and like some of the crew knew that something was up, but the passengers were probably just like, all right. But others of the group broke into the cargo hold like pretty easily. It only took them 3 minutes to get into the cargo hold, steal 120 packages of diamonds, and get out. 3 minutes. So pretty quick. They ended up with $50 million worth of diamonds. And they drove out the same hole in the fence that they came in, and they just set off into the night or day. I don't know what time it was.
They rode off into the sunset.
They actually found one of the vans burned up. Oh, wait, like on fire. It had been on fire at some point. I don't know if they found it on fire.
It was burnt up.
Details.
Either currently or in the past.
But they found one of the vans, and they never found the other one, never found the perpetrators, never found the diamonds. So that was a success on their part.
Well,
not
on their
for
part.
us.
Yeah.
Of course.
Oh, what? Of course. I mean, that was a success for them. Failure for, the rest of the nation. It's fine.
Diamond people. So that's that. What do you think?
I liked it.
Good.
I felt like I was in it. I felt like I was present. They had great tactics, I can already tell. We may not know what they were, but they succeeded, so great tactics.
Yep. I always picture heists happening in like 100 years ago, and I forget that they happen all the time.
I always picture heists happening like now.
Really? I always picture like old-timey, like fedoras and trench coats and old
Kuklinski
Model
in
T.
it.
Yeah, just, I don't know. But, yeah.
I picture like the Now You See Me.
Yeah.
Or like the ocean, so I think that's why I think of it more modern.
Those are solid. Solid. So now we get into a doozy of a story. Are you ready?
I don't know. I'll brace myself.
So you know how interested I am in wrongful conviction cases. So even though it was a very brief part of the book, I decided to latch onto that and go hard into it.
Decided it was a prime opportunity for some education.
Yes. So on March 28th of 1998, Mariano Soto and his wife, Jacinta, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I looked it up. They were stabbed to death in their home in Chicago. So Mariano Soto was stabbed 39 times and his wife was stabbed 20 times. The couple also had a 2-month-old girl and a 3-year-old little boy, both of which were abducted after the murder. So pretty much the most horrible thing you could think of happening.
So overkill and kidnapping.
The same day, across town, a woman named Adriana was due to give birth. She headed to the hospital, and when she got home, she had her little newborn, and she had a 3-year-old boy. And her family was kind of like, that's odd.
Peculiar.
But she said that at the hospital, there was another woman giving birth who had this 3-year-old boy, and she had no one to watch him, so she asked Adriana to take her son and watch him while she gave birth.
Where was she hiding him before she went to give birth?
Who knows?
Trunk?
But that was her story, that this little boy belonged to another woman at the hospital, and she was just helping her out by watching him, even though she had just given birth, which is, an ordeal. Adriana lived with 9 other people, including Gabriel, Solache, and Arturo DeLeon-Reyes, and her husband, and I think her husband's brother and his wife. So there were a lot of people at the house. A few days later is when the bodies of Mariano and his wife were discovered, and the pictures of the kidnapped children were plastered everywhere on the news and everything. And Adriana's sister-in-law realized that this little boy was the Soto's child that had been abducted. So she went straight to Adriana and she said, I think the woman that gave you this child was involved with this murder.
Oh, she didn't think her sister did it.
No, she thought that the woman at the hospital had done it, and she was like, we need to go to the police right away. Honestly, up until this next point, I was on Adriana's side. But then her husband came in and he said, okay, we got to take this kid to the police. Like, obviously something sus is happening and we need to get this taken care of, get him in the right care and everything. And Adriana said, no, we should just abandon him in an alley. Yeah, that was her solution. So her husband was obviously like, no.
That means she's guilty.
So he was like, absolutely not. We're not abandoning a 3-year-old in an alley. So Rosario, Adriana's husband, decided to take the boy to the police station on his own, and he got Gabriel, Solache, and Arturo DeLeon-Reyes to come with him, and they all set off to take this little boy to the police and figure out what was going on.
If he is wrongfully convicted, we gonna have a problem. He was trying to do the right thing.
So these three men only spoke Spanish. None of them spoke any English at all. And they had to wait hours at the police station for a Spanish-speaking officer to come up. And finally, when they did, the boy was ID'd as the Soto child that had been taken. And the three men were separated and put in interrogation rooms and interrogated pretty harshly. You know how Chicago has been in a couple of our cases. So
all of them, all wrongful conviction cases. Chicago.
There's a reason it's one of the biggest wrongful conviction places in the country. But I digress. So police knew something was up. They went back to the house where Adriana and Rosario lived, and they found Adriana, and they found that her so-called newborn was the 3-month-old that had been abducted. So not a newborn at all.
They couldn't tell.
I know. I feel like
newborns look very distinct.
Yeah, they do.
They look like grumpy, old, wrinkly men.
But Adriana was arrested and taken to the station, and she said, yeah, she admitted to faking the entire pregnancy, which I feel like is hard to do also. She said she and Rosario had been trying for a child, and it
was this like a 9-month extravaganza she was lying and prepping?
Yep. Yeah, she was faking the entire thing. And Rosario had no idea. He was so excited. They had been trying forever for a child, and he was so excited.
He didn't feel her bare belly ever in those 9 months?
I guess not. And also, when she went to the hospital, she said, oh, I'm going to go to the hospital, but no one can come with me. So that's a little suspect, too, if you ask me.
I'm having birth, but I'm going to drive myself.
Yeah. Don't come with me, husband.
And when I come back, I'm going to come back today.
And I'll have a 3-year-old, too. So she said that she saw Jacinta and her kids at a clinic and just followed them home and started getting fixated on them. A couple days later, Gabriel and Arturo went to the home and killed the couple, and they actually confessed to this.
Which we know, false confessions.
Rosario was released. They obviously saw that he had nothing to do with it. Adriana said he had nothing to do with it, so he just was allowed to go home, and Gabriel and Arturo had to stay there. They were both charged and tried in June of 2000 for the murders, the kidnapping, and the home invasion. And you would think that it stops there, but we know how things go. So during the trial, DNA analysis was shown, and Adriana's blood was found on one of the knives at the Soto home and also on a towel. There was also blood evidence in her car, and Mariano's blood was found on her pants. So there was evidence that she was there. There was evidence connecting her to Mariano, just a lot of physical evidence on her part. But there was no evidence whatsoever that Gabriel or Arturo were ever at the home, did anything, had any part in it.
So of course they're going to let them go, right?
Of course not. This case, like several others that we've covered,
Mermal,
very much relied only on confession. No physical evidence, not even really much circumstantial evidence besides the confession. Police say everything was above board and everything was fine. They did everything right, which they do. Always say that. But the two men told a very, very different story. They were both physically beaten and intimidated, terrified during their interrogation. Solache even said that he lost his hearing because he was hit in the head so many times. And the jail physician said that, yes, he had been complaining of ear pain and that it showed that he had lost most of his hearing and everything. So that was their witness. But the prosecution said, oh, no, he had a car accident a couple years ago. So that's where the hearing loss came from.
Show me the medical proof.
Exactly. So this is the part that made me the most mad. So like I said before, Gabriel and Arturo only spoke Spanish. They didn't speak English at all. So the interrogation was basically Officer Ronaldo Guevara asking them questions in Spanish and them responding in Spanish, and then him relaying that in English to someone that was writing it down in English. So
he was not telling what actually was said.
Right. And at the end of it, they forced these two men to sign these confessions in English, even though they could not read it. They could not verify that anything that they had said was said. You know, they couldn't verify it at all because they couldn't read it. So they made them sign this confession, and then they were like, oh, see, they confessed. But in reality, what they claim happened was that Guevara was asking them irrelevant questions, things that didn't even have to do with the murder at all. And they would respond in Spanish, and then he would relay that as though they were confessing to the person writing it down in English. So he wasn't even asking them questions. He just wanted to get them talking. So it sounded like, you know, something was happening. So they couldn't just be like, oh, did you kill her? No. It was like questions that had nothing to do with anything, just to get them going.
Wow.
And since no one else there spoke Spanish, which I feel like is one person in the whole department spoke Spanish. Really?
Yeah. Also, shouldn't it be like you have to have at least 2 people or something?
I feel like that should definitely be a rule, because even though like you can definitely, you know, get 2 people involved in that, but it's a lot harder. And I feel like a lot of people wouldn't try it as much, because he knew he was the only one that spoke Spanish. He knew that they had no power. And on top of everything, these were undocumented immigrants, so they weren't even supposed to be in the country, you know, so he had so much power over them.
It's all about control.
So in the confession, they said in quotes, that Mariano was killed as he opened the door and that Jacinta was killed in her bed. But in reality, it was the other way around. Jacinta was killed as she opened the door and Mariano was killed in bed. So that was suspicious. And then also these allegations of being beaten and, you know, physically assaulted during the interrogation, which is also another very common thing we hear. Rosario, who again had not been charged, had been let go, he also said that he had been beaten over the course of his interrogation. So,
note to self, like, just don't use other people as punching bags.
Yeah.
Just don't. Like, why?
And it gets a lot worse for old Officer Ronaldo Guevara.
Good.
But at this point, Gabriel and Arturo were convicted on all counts. Solache was sentenced to death, while DeLeon-Reyes was sentenced to life in prison without parole. But in 2003, the governor of Illinois commuted all death row sentences to life in prison without parole. So Solache
is okay.
Yeah. Well, he was. I mean, he's not dead.
Oh, but he gets out because it's a wrongful.
Both men obviously appealed their conviction.
He does get out because it's a wrongful.
Both men appealed their convictions. Both men appealed both convictions, and unfortunately they were upheld. They appealed again on the grounds that Officer Guevara had been a part of many coerced false confessions and had been accused of police brutality numerous times. But those petitions were denied. But in 2006, the denial was then reversed, which, gotta love the court system. And an evidentiary hearing was ordered about the case. So 2 attorneys from the Center on Wrongful Convictions, which you may know if you watched Making a Murderer.
If you know Kim Kardashian.
Yeah, that was the organization involved with Brendan Dassey, I believe. So good people over there. They filed petitions for new trials, again showing that Ronaldo Guevara had been involved with many, many cases involving coerced confessions in murder cases, and they also cited inadequate assistance from Solache's attorney. Guevara would not testify at this hearing or any hearing on his behavior or conduct. He always pled the fifth. In 2016, a circuit court judge declined vacating their convictions, but did say that there should be a hearing about the validity of the confessions. By 2017, six men had been exonerated from murder convictions based on false confessions in cases that Ronaldo Guevara had been involved in. Many cited specifically police brutality from Guevara. One even got a new trial on the grounds that he only confessed because Guevara was beating him so badly. So by 2017, again, 6 men exonerated based on Guevara's involvement in their case. On December 13th, 2017, a judge suppressed the confessions of both men and straight up said that Guevara denying this abuse was a lie. He said, quote, "I can't give an ounce of credibility to something he did 20 years ago. If he would lie after being given immunity under oath, why would this court believe that he was telling the truth when he first testified?" End quote. So, call him out. And in that, he is referring to another case, one of the cases about his misconduct that led to an exoneration, that he literally was given immunity. Just tell the truth. They were like, just tell the truth. Nothing will happen to you if you just tell the truth. And he wouldn't do it.
He still lied.
Still lied.
It's like, this stuff, it sucks, but like I'm so just like immune, I guess you could say, to it, because none of it surprises me.
Yeah, just desensitized because it's so common. Like we read about it so often.
And that's so sad. This should not be that common. And it's the same thing every time.
Mm-hmm.
Beating, false confession, lying in court. They always bring back up, hey, we should reassess the confession because that's all we have. There's always DNA that proves otherwise that they ignore, like completely ignore.
Mm-hmm. Yep. On December 21st, 2017, the charges were dismissed for both men and they were released from prison. But being undocumented immigrants, they were immediately detained by ICE and were kept in jail, basically. In the next 2 years, 9 more men would be exonerated based directly on Guevara's conduct. So that's 15 total. 15.
And see, that's something that Brittany has mentioned before, where it's like people, when they do a wrongful conviction, they don't want to come out and say that it was wrong, because then stuff like this happens where they have 15 other cases that they have to assess because one person was being awful. And I mean, obviously it's not just one person in these cases. There's people who aren't listening to all the evidence. There's people who are lying, doing the interrogations, and there's usually multiple people beating them and multiple people involved in the intense interrogations. But it's always, if one person comes out about them lying about anything, a whole load of cases are going to come under question.
Yeah, that's going to definitely be part of the appeal of everybody that had that person part of their case.
And that's great for us and for everyone involved in the cases, the families, the people who are victims being held as in wrongful conviction situations. But it also is something that courts don't want to deal with.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be an issue in the first place, especially since they knew that his conduct was questionable long before this. They knew. As of 2018, that's pretty much the most recent things I heard about it. It's uncertain what will ultimately happen. Each man spent 20 years in prison for something they didn't do. So that's a big chunk of your life just gone. DeLeon-Reyes decided to go back to Mexico voluntarily to be with his wife and children, but the government decided that they wanted to have that switched over to an involuntary deportation because they wanted to make it harder for him to come back in the future and get legal citizenship. So they wanted it to be like put down as a involuntary, even though he was voluntarily leaving.
Just like rubbing salt in the wound.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of you will be divided on this issue and stuff, but at the end of the day, these men had 20 years of their lives taken because of police misconduct that was systemic. And then to add insult to injury on that of being like, actually, even though you said that you would do this on your own, we're going to make it look like we had to force you so you can't come back. Like, that's just like, you know, we wronged you, but get out of my face.
Yeah, and even if he did end up trying to come back later, his wrongful conviction and 20 years in prison will be on his record forever. So it's not like they couldn't see that anyway.
Yeah. Solache was released on bond and really was hoping to be able to stay in the U.S. I haven't been able to find like his current status right now. So if I find anything more on this case, I will definitely let you guys know via social media, or if you have any information on this case, definitely let me know. But that was just a really hot button one for me because it's just, like you said, it's the same story over and over and over and over and over again.
Jerry, it all happens to be in Chicago.
Yeah, literally. Hobbs and Rivera and these 15 men. I mean, we could literally just have like an episode every single day for someone that's been wrongfully convicted, basically, like all of these. So
exactly,
I encourage you to go and look into this case, look into the other people that had been wrongfully convicted and hear their stories and know their names. And like I always say in these cases, get involved in your local community, see what's happening in the police and the court system in your own community, and figure out if there's something that you can do, or, you know, someone you can vote for, or like things that you can change to make sure that this doesn't happen in your community, because it's just so common. And I mean, 20 years, imagine just having 20 years of your life just sitting in a concrete box, basically. Like, shouldn't happen. And when they know that someone has conduct like that, they knew that that was happening, I'm sure, and still let it fly. So he's guilty, but also a lot of other people are guilty too that will never be named, that will never be brought to justice. So just keep that in mind and make sure you educate yourself and other people in your lives about what's happening, because it's easy to kind of push these cases out of your mind and not really pay attention to what's happening. And we as true crime fans know that there's a lot of messed up stuff happening. So stay vigilant, I guess.
Yes. And if we find anything on that case, like Brittany said, we'll put it on social media. The best place to see it would be our Facebook group, so go and join that if you haven't. You can find us at The Abyss Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We usually post updates more so to our Facebook page, but
yeah, it's an easier format to kind of update you with details instead of just a picture or like a little tweet.
Exactly. So go and check it out on there. You can also follow us on other platforms if you choose to do so. And you can always get updates. We always like post funny memes and things on our story on Instagram and stuff. So if you want a good laugh or anything like that, come and join us. So that kind of wraps up the discussion about The 19th Christmas by James Patterson and Maxine Paetro. And now we're going to jump into the book for next month. So the book we are going to be doing is going to come out on February 5th. We do it every first Friday. So if you ever miss the episode ending or you ever, can't remember what the date was, it's always the first Friday of every month. So February 5th is going to be the next episode, and we will be reading The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley.
And spoiler alert, it's a good one.
Yeah, it is a good one. I promise I am reading this one and I am almost done. So we are going to do it for you guys.
I'm back on track.
And here we're going to read a little bit of a summary just to give you a little taste of what it's going to be like. It says, quote, "Everyone's invited and everyone's a suspect. During the languid days of the Christmas break, a group of 30-something-year-old friends from Oxford meet to welcome in the new year together, a tradition they began as students 10 years ago. For this vacation, they've chosen an idyllic and isolated estate in the Scottish Highlands, the perfect place to get away and unwind by themselves. The trip begins innocently enough, admiring the stunning, if foreboding, scenery, champagne in front of a crackling fire, and reminiscences about the past. But after a decade, the weight of the secret resentments has grown too heavy for the group's tenuous nostalgia to bear. Amid the boisterous revelry of New Year's Eve, the cord holding them together snapped, just as a historic blizzard seals the lodge off from the outside world. 2 days later, on New Year's Day, one of them is dead, and another of them did it. Keep your friends close, the old adage says, but how close is too close?" End quote. This very much has like Agatha Christie, Ruth Ware vibes. It's very like whodunit, and I love a good whodunit. So
yeah, it's a really good one. I really enjoyed it, and I really like Ruth Ware, and I like all of those kinds of authors. So, ow.
And I am really enjoying it. I've got like 60 pages left, so I'm like getting in the heat when it's like, what's gonna happen? And you're about to figure out, and then you're like, oh, shit's gonna hit the fan. So it's gonna be really good. I hope you guys like it. If you love a good whodunit, then you'll love this book. So thank you guys for diving back into the abyss with us today. We have loved being able to talk to you. I'm sorry that I wasn't as prepared for it as I should have been. Brittany nailed it, though. Give her a good round of applause.
Thank you.
She slayed. So she brought you this awesome episode today, and we're excited that we got to chat with you, and we can't wait to talk to you next time.
Bye.